Is it working? Test. There we go. Is it working? Test. There we go.
Zach, I thought you were going to bring Joe on with you.
No, he had other business to take care of. Apparently.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Think so.
I don't know what else he could be doing at this point.
Probably taking a rest.
call this meeting to order. It's March 14th, 2022. The agenda has been posted. The media has been notified. Please call roll.
Chris Frederickson,
Here.
Thomas Kelly,
Here.
Eileen Daniel, Carrie Mikulowski,
Here.
Gerald Anderson,
Here.
Thomas Barnett,
Here.
David Holt,
Here.
Andrew Larson.
We have quorum to do business. All please stand. Public comment says received by council. I believe, Gerald, you have one?
Yes. This is from Ryan Berghammer, 127 West Pelham Street. He says, I would like to ask for the council to consider bringing back longevity pay for non-union employees. Item 9B, Addendum A of the Employee Manual. Taking away longevity pay was an insult to some of the long-term employees that have made a career of working for the city of Rhinelander. The 0.5% for every 5 years of employment does not seem a very large expense to show appreciation to all of those who've continued employment for several years. I ask you as a council to at least have a discussion of this, or if it may be a feasible option.
Next, Carrie Bladorn.
Thank you. Hello, members of the Rhinelander City Council. I'm Carrie Bladorn, and here tonight representing the Oneida County Fair as Vice President of the Board, along with President Meg Sprexel, to apprise the city that the Oneida County Fair has gone independent. We are no longer a county entity, but is now operating as a nonprofit organization committed to continuing the tradition of putting on a great county fair and representing all four corners of Oneida County. We'd like to thank the city of Rhinelander, the residents of the Pioneer Park neighborhoods, and all of the city departments that have lended a hand in the past, and this council for its support over the years. Once again, we would like to hold the Oneida County Fair at beautiful Pioneer Park, and we are here today to convey our intent to do so. The Oneida County Fair has had one of the best fairs held in recent memory last year, and we hope to continue that trend this year. Every year, the Oneida County Fair draws thousands of people to one of the city's most beautiful parks for a wonderful live entertainment, excellent food, and community camaraderie. It is our goal that the fair draws the communities of Oneida County together here to the county seat of Rhinelander. This year, the fair is scheduled to be held July 28th through 31st, and our board is working on putting together an awesome event. We would like to work with city officials to allow use of Pioneer Park and obtain the support of the city for this year's fair. As the fair would like to remain at Pioneer Park for the foreseeable future, we would also like to make a formal request that if the Parks Department vacates all or part of their garage at Pioneer Park as they transition to their new building on Coon Street, that the Oneida County Fair could potentially receive permission to use any empty space in that building if, in fact, it becomes available and is deemed appropriate by the city. Lastly, it's important for us, that our local elected officials feel welcome at the Oneida County Fair. And so we invite you and all of your families to join us for the 2022 Oneida County Fair. Thank you, and we'll see you at the fair. And I just want to wrap up that I did send a message to Zach today and talk briefly with Steve before we got going here. So hoping to schedule a meeting with you fine folks, with Meg, myself, and our secretary, and chat about the event this summer. Thank you.
Excellent. All righty. Mayor's comments. I've been advised by my attorney not to have any. Just kidding. He'll nod yes on that one over and over again. We had about a 2-hour meeting today. He's like, don't, what? Okay, moving on. Meeting minutes.
Barnett, I make a motion to approve the February 28th, 2022 council meeting minutes.
Holt, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Gerald?
I'd like to move to add to the end of the closed session portion the words "no action taken." That's what we usually do, and it seems like there ought to be some kind of report at the end of that. Right after motion carries.
Okay. So you would like to have after B, no action taken?
At the end of paragraph B, yeah.
Okay. There's a motion on the table to amend it to add no action taken after point B.
Barnett, second.
There's a motion and a second on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Back to the original motion. The meeting minutes with the amended part. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Reports from boards, commissions, and committees.
That's fine, but it's got to come after the motion to return to open session. It's got to be at the end, down at the bottom, just so it's not. So you've got the ayes and nays, and then it says motion carries, then would be Gerald's correction. That's what you meant, Gerald?
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Motion carries at the very end.
Yes, good, okay, thank you. I just wanted to be clear. I have no problem.
All right. Reports from boards, commissions, and committees. The Planning Commission meeting minutes are on page 8. And the Public Arts Commission are page 9. It wasn't necessarily meeting minutes in this respect. It was the scope and estimates that we'll bring forth. So it was just their meeting on what it would take to continue on with that process. So there's nothing more than acceptance of the two commissions.
Holt, I will make a motion to accept the reports from boards, commissions, and committees as presented.
Addison, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Ordinance, the first reading, amending 2.05.15 accommodation tax. This is the add-on. This is the first reading of this, and you'll see it's a blue and red striked out. Those are the collaborations and parts to this, and our attorney will also have some changes by the second portion, but this is for your reading and for your input for the next 2 weeks, as we'll probably bring the second reading and the actual ordinance forth here at the end of March. Any questions?
Mayor, I would also add that the blue additions are the proposals from Lauren, from the chamber and the marketing committee. So at this point, as you just indicated, it's likely that there will be further edits, but at least getting this in front of the group for the first reading.
I'm gonna, just so you know, I'm,
Yeah, that's what I was going to point out, is the blue changes are the ones that were put together by the marketing committee of the chamber. That's what basically Zach just said. The bigger thing is, we'd like to ask you as the council members to please make your comments so that we know before the next meeting, so we have a chance to go back to the chamber before we get to the meeting, so that we can share any concerns that the council has with the proposed room accommodation tax. There's going to be some additions because there was some legislative changes that required different forms and stuff we'll have to add in. But substantively, this is kind of the proposal that's out there right now. So if you have any substantive concerns, please share them with the administration, if you would, please.
David?
I don't know how substantive this is, but do we need to update the city clerk information at the end?
Yes.
Okay. So.
And we do understand, too, that some of the other changes that happened during this time, they are brought before you on the next reading. You need to pay attention to in that point, but that's also why we try to get the packet out as early as possible. All right? All right, moving on. Unfinished business from previous council meetings. discuss the web development qualifications and solicitation. I'm going to request that Carrie McLowski, I can't even say it. All right, good. Aid in this solicitation with Zach, our city administrator, as far as choosing or selecting a committee or a company to bring forth to council for recommendation. That's the purview of my seat that I'm allowed to do. I know Carrie was instructive in just saying it needed to be brought forward. We knew our website needed to be updated, and at what point it was budgetarily possible or anything else is where we sat with that. So, all right, next, discuss and approve Addendum A from the Employee Manual. It's page 14 in your packet.
And I just want to point out, this is the second version, or second time this came before the group. It's unchanged from the previous version. Certainly can answer any questions about it. The intent with this is to address some of the questions about loose ends, essentially, or incompatibilities to or inconsistencies with the manual as well as current policy or practice as it's been approved either through various annual resolutions or other council action. This is, I would call it an interim step, and the intent is to bring forward an updated employee manual for consideration after we begin and conclude discussions with city staff throughout the departments. So we've kicked off that round of discussion and started to introduce the topic to staff, but we want to make sure that we have this document that memorializes the existing situation with employee benefits and employee procedures, so that way our new hires are up to speed as well as existing employees are on the same page.
Barnett, I would like to make a motion to table this until the next meeting. There's a couple of things in here I wanted to look over and a little more research on it before I can honestly vote on it.
We have a motion to table,
Holt, I'll second that.
and that ends the discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, should I just ask a question as to where we find the employee manual? And I've tried on the website, and I know I had, a few months ago, I had some way of accessing it, and now I forgot. If we want to look at what the manual says now, how do we get to that?
Zach?
Figure out a link, Gerald, to council, so that way it's easily found. But you can also, I believe, we'll be able to access it in Laserfish, but that public portal link might be a little bit challenging to get to as well. So we'll get a direct link to you next business day here.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank Rachel for doing work on this as far as bringing forth the non-union resolutions and bringing to try to update this. This is a fair amount of work as far as it goes, and it's kind of a needle in a haystack with some of the stuff that's there. So I appreciate that. Real quick, as long as I have Rachel, I'll have you stand up real quick. Were you approached about the idea of longevity pay at this point yet?
No, I haven't.
No, I'll have you stand up to the mic.
No, I have not been.
Just because it was asked for us to discuss at this point. One of the things, and I'll say when we discuss these things, it probably is discussed by management team and/or she looks for what's going on. The discussion that happens beyond that, but the first person I'd bring attention to would be to our HR manager as far as that goes. When there are things that you want done, not scolding you, but I want to make sure we do have that discussion. And is there any further discussion from council on that? Zach, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well,
there's Andrew Larson.
Mr. Chairman, you've got a motion to table on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
And you're discussing the motion. You should be voting on the motion to table. I'm sorry. But
Yeah,
that's
no,
what you
you're
should do.
correct. You're correct. As a parliamentarian, that is correct. Sorry, Rachel. You can sit down. We have a motion to table in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it.
Now, if you want to talk about what's going to happen in the future, you're certainly able to do that, because I think it's appropriate, since it's been tabled, if there's going to be further discussion, you may want to suggest the facilitation of how that's going to occur.
You mean direct them towards HR as suggested?
If that's
Yeah.
the way you want it to work. You're the mayor, not me.
No, I completely understand that. Thank you for pointing it out. Yeah, at parliamentary procedure, we no longer talk about that, but I would ask you to address questions to HR that we can then turn around and address or be brought on her council report so that we know what issues are there with that as we vote. Appreciate it. All right, moving on. Discuss and approve the preliminary utility assessment procedures for 3.0203 for Olson Avenue Utility Works.
That's mine. It's really Zach's, but we can hardly hear him, so I'm going to talk loud. What we've been working on for the last several months is the extension of utilities down Olson Avenue, mainly facilitated because there are some people that want to build or construct a home on that street. And right now, there is no city sewer and water on that street. So it becomes incumbent on the city under the ordinance that we currently have to extend the sewer and water down that street. And if we're going to extend the sewer and water down the street, we've talked to our engineering firm, and Mark's here, he can talk about detail, that it would be a good idea to extend it as far as we can. So basically, the extension would be to the furthest house on Olson Lane, and that's just basically behind Home Depot. There's a house on the west side of the what's called Olson Lane. It'll extend all the way to that point. Now, at that point, we can't really extend it further without putting in a lift station. A lift station, given the fact there's really only one house beyond that, would be very much cost prohibitive. So the administration is not recommending extending beyond that period of time or that location. But it would also be foolish not to extend it to that point since you're going down that street. So what we've done is we put preliminary numbers together, and we were going to pass those out tonight, but I basically thought it was probably better to wait till we have the public hearing, because one is required by law on the assessment, and at that time we'll have actual numbers. We only have really good guesses by Mark and his team. But the bottom line, and I think I want to point this out to the council, what we're really looking for tonight is the total cost of the project. And again, remember, these are fairly rough numbers, but if you were going to look at the total project, it comes out to about, I think, about $450,000. I think that's correct, Mark? $550, because we got to put the other aspects.
Go ahead
of
and
the
stand up
project
to the
on it.
mark.
Yeah, the other aspect of the project, by the way, is basically bringing the road up to standards and putting in some curb plus some, we have to put some storm sewer. Storm sewer, curb, and the roadway would not be paid for by the people living along. There wouldn't be assessment for that. There would be an assessment for the property owners for the extension of the sanitary sewer and the water. And there are approximately 10 properties along that stretch that would actually have access along the property to the extension. Of those, 3 of those properties are already serviced by sanitary sewer and water. So that is of no benefit to them. And under the rules of assessment, you can't assess a property where there's no benefit being provided. Now, under the city ordinance, we have a requirement that if we extend sewer and water, the property owner has basically 1 year to connect. And if they don't connect, then we can take whatever appropriate action this council would deem necessary. In saying that, we're probably going to be asking the council to give some consideration to perhaps extending that, because there are at least some of those property owners that have relatively new wells and septic systems, but that's for another day and another time. What we're talking about tonight is the recommendation, and we can go into more detail if you wish, is that we follow the tradition that the city has in the past, and on the assessments for the sewer and the assessments for the water, we're suggesting that the property owner would pick about 43% of that assessment, and the city would pick up about 57% of that assessment. And we feel that that would be, as administration, we feel that would be a fair an equitable methodology of bringing sanitary sewer and water into this neighborhood. And that's really what we're looking for from the council tonight, is action on that behalf. Now, Mark's here, he can answer any questions you would have. Zach can answer any questions that may be better directed to him. But the three of us have been working on this project for quite a period of time to try to find out what's equitable, what's necessary as far as the extension, and how can we get the most out of our dollar. The other thing I should point out is what we're really looking for is in the bottom line, it's only 25% of the actual cost is going to be assessed back to the property owner. But that's because the property owner would not be assessed for the road improvement, the storm sewer, and the curb.
So before the council right now is actually the approving of the utility assessment procedures as far as how they came to those numbers. So it's 43% on the 57% of the water, but 25% of the total cost, because it'll also get the advantageous nature of a new road surface. Is that correct, Mark?
That is correct. Am I on?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'd accept a motion. Yeah, go ahead, Gerald. You have a question?
Well, yeah, those percentages are a percent of what total? Do we have an estimate of what that is? And how many people then will that be distributed over?
Okay, there are 7 properties that are being benefited, and those 7 properties, that cost would be equitably divided over those 7. So you take your total cost, you'll divide by 7. That'll give you the total cost for water, that'll give you the total cost for the sanitary sewer. So they would be assessed the amount that would relate to their 1/7 after applying the quotient of 43 versus 57.
Thank you.
Michalowski, I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary utility assessment procedures 3.02.03 for Olson Avenue utility work.
Barnett second.
Larson, second.
Larson got it before me.
Okay. Did you get that? Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Discuss winter snow and ice control. This is page 15 in your packet.
Do we gotta make a motion to discuss this?
Nope.
So,
Go ahead and raise your hand though, but that's fine.
reading through this, I just want to make sure that this is an ordinance for citizens to follow for snow removal of their property, but not anything to do with policy for snow removal by the city.
That would be a correct statement.
Okay. Should there be a specific cost added into this where it says they're going to be charged the owner of the property from which said snow and ice has been removed? Should there be a specific charge, or is it not possible to have that?
Well, you don't want a specific charge because then you'd have to amend your ordinance like every year. In other words, basically we would calculate what the charge would be based upon the labor, based upon, whether.
Okay, yeah, so one snow removal is not the same as another, and it could take more hours and stuff to do. Okay, all right. Yeah, that's all the questions I had. Thanks.
Anybody else? Moving on. Oh, sorry, Gerald. Better look up.
In paragraph B, 1B, the fourth line, it says, the third line, where no boulevard exists, snow may be deposited at the curb line. For how long? I guess the question, if you walk downtown where there's no boulevard, there's a lot of snow and ice piled up at the curb line. which makes it difficult for a person who's parked there to get into various establishments. I might note that the gentleman who has written to me regularly about this issue has now died, but the ice is still there.
First of all, sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I think that the response that we would have is that if the city, if the downtown is what we use in particular, if you move it to your curb line, then the city crew can come and take it away. But if cars parked there, the city crew can't come and take it away until there's no cars there. And so it's always that, when does it snow? How does it, and so it's probably a 24-hour situation, Gerald.
Yeah, I'm fine with 24 hours. I would say some of that now has been there weeks. But,
I was going to say in those, if you can hear me all right, the downtown business district, school zone area, as well as many of the churches, that snow is pulled generally within 24 to 48 hours after the snowfall, because the crew has to generally come in earlier. We want to allow for ample rest time between those snow events so those folks can work safely.
Nothing else?
So that is the intention, that if they push it to the curb line, the city will take it from there.
Can be pulled, yes. Yep, Carrie.
So can we only comment on this particular ordinance? Because my concern with snow removal isn't so much the property owners, it's the snow banks that are accumulated.
Yeah, it's agendized as winter snow ice control. The fact that we put the ordinance in there does not mean that we cannot talk about it, because it is appropriately agendized.
Okay, so the things that have been coming to my attention from constituents is that they're having a hard time seeing past the boulevards because the snowbanks are so high. And in the past, those had been removed by the city. And I believe this is the first year, or maybe the second year, that that's not occurring on a regular basis during downtime when there's not snow events. So I'm just wondering if that's something that we can take a look at and, as the city crews have time, in their plans, that they can remove some of those boulevards that are in high traffic areas.
Absolutely. Happened today at noon. So it's already 3 hours past.
Thank you.
But I appreciate that. One of the concerns this year was the differences in snow removal from other times or other places. I know when I first sat in this seat 4 years ago, we were talking about the same problem about removing the snowbanks, but it was because we had a record snowfall. So therefore, it was impossible to keep up with it. Moved out into the streets. The streets weren't as wide. It just built up high. We didn't have time in that downtime. That being the case, this is a different set of circumstances of whether or not our level of service dropped in that area and what we were going to do to improve it. So I promise you that we're going to improve it.
I would add, too, it's also a function of snow storage capacity in places where we used to store snow and maybe don't do so anymore. It's also a function of the equipment that we use. The snowblower we have is quite aged, and we're a little sensitive to putting that thing through too much more routine effort for fear that it might break down and we might not have a backup. So just some planning and considerations that we're internally discussing for future snow years and snow events.
The other portion of this, if we went to a brine truck, was supposed to, and we spread more salt this year, and that was supposed to take care of the snow so it melted before it prior got to a boulevard or anything else. Didn't quite happen based on time events of snow, and therefore it built up. Gerald?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've seen much at all this year of removing the snowbanks, and in past years, it has always happened long before this.
You are correct. Yeah. Anybody else? Moving on. Discuss the skate park feasibility work. And I'm going to actually ask you to stand up at the mic there, Ashley, just because you spent 4 hours with this. I walked in the last 15 minutes. I don't count.
I spent 6 hours.
Oh, sorry. My bad. My bad.
It was a long day. Yeah, so you just want an overview? Okay, great.
Chris, hey, have her identify herself for the record.
Sure. Ashley McLaughlin, Program and Operations Director at ArtStart, and also contracted to do the feasibility study. So this past week, I think, yes, this past week, we had quite a lot of events happening. We brought over Whit Siasoko, who we recommended that we were going to bring over from the Twin Cities. He and his friend Matt, who is also a skateboarder and has helped him build some skate parks in the past, came over. We started our steering committee that day. They participated in those meetings, and then we also sat down with the Over It group and hashed out basically the next steps for building a pop-up skate park for the kids that they can float around to different events. They're planning to meet again virtually on Wednesday with Whit and discuss a location that they have identified to hold their opening on May 14th or 15th, hopefully, to do their first pop-up event with the skate park elements. But it was really a great day. The steering committee had a lot of really great people in it. We identified a few more that we wanted to bring in. We had some pretty deep discussions about the Oneida County Health Department's recent survey, which identified 3 major focus areas for our community, being mental health, being drug abuse addiction work, and then also chronic disease. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about how this project directly aligns with that, how we can deepen that, and then also the other partners and potential sites for it. Then on Thursday, the day after, I spent a couple more hours with Whit driving around our community, and we met with Tom at Tom's Drawing Board, and a couple other, we went and toured the old skate park site. We talked about a little bit of the history there, and we identified some other potential sites in Rhinelander, just, between us. And at the end of the month, we're going to be holding our first listening session, the community listening session, where we call in community members and allow them to sit down and get involved, get engaged, and start talking about if we can even do a skate park and what they would like to see out of it and what the purpose needs to be. So,
date, time, and place?
March 29th, 6 p.m. at ArtStart. It's a Tuesday. So, yeah, great day.
Thank you.
It's March 29th, 6 p.m. at ArtStart, and it's open to whoever wants to come. That's the point of it.
Tom, would you like to give any updates on the other steering committee ventures as far as working with the League of Wisconsin Voters?
Yeah, the League of Wisconsin Women's Voters had asked the Over It kids to be part of their Get Out the Vote campaign. They asked them to come up with a video where the kids were promoting the importance of voting, no matter what party that is. Very nonpartisan kind of videos, and from my understanding, they are currently shooting those videos for them. So,
TikTok, I believe.
Yep, the Tiki-Tok.
Excellent. All righty. Any questions for them? Discuss and update the sustainability plan implementation. Zach.
Council had previously asked us to bring this item forward on a routine basis, and so this is my update. All the lighting at City Hall has been changed out to LED lighting, so that task is complete. The wastewater treatment facility will have its outside wall pack lights changed out as the season weather improves, and folks can work outdoors in a little bit more enjoyable fashion. We've received about 10% of the cost back in a focus on energy rebate, and all the lighting that we did purchase is expected or anticipated to have a 1-year payback. So all around a great project. I want to thank Jeremy and his crew at Parks for assisting with us thus far, and Jim and his crew at Wastewater for prioritizing this effort as they go forward. So all in all, a good thing on that side of things. So it should have a positive budgetary impact as we look at utility costs going forward. Additionally, the landfill, we continue to field input and feedback from various funders as well as developers who do solar installations. And so that feasibility study has been sent around a few times. And so through kind of various conversations, we just continue to make that a priority as well.
Real quick for the average person listening, what does a 1-year payback mean?
The cost of the light fixtures will be recovered within 1 year of operation. So the utility savings are such that we'll have them paid for within a year.
And then we'll be saving from those years consecutively on afterwards. Excellent.
Correct.
Excellent. Any questions? All right, moving on. A and B we're going to take together, and I'm going to have our attorney, Steve, explain real quick.
So what we're talking about here is annexation, and what we have basically 3 parcels of land that the first one, there's already gone through the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission has also already approved of this annexation. The second parcels were not part of the original plan that went through the Planning Commission. So we, as administrative staff, are recommending that we postpone any real formal action so that we can do all 3 at once. But we may need the Plan Commission to take action on the what's B on your agenda, and then get back to us. But the bigger concept here is the town of Pelican and the city of Rhinelander are in complete cooperation. This is land that we're just trying to cross the T's and dot the I's. This is for development purposes. And the developer who owns the land is cooperating. We're going to have to go through and create certain certified survey maps that are going to have to correspond with the property annexed. I mean, there's a lot of minutia that has to go on, but the bottom line is we just need the council, and this is the one thing I would like to know from the council. Does any member of the council have any objection to proceeding with this annexation? And do you have any questions about this annexation? Because if you do, we should really get that out of the table. There has to be a public hearing. The people have to have a right to voice their opinion. They did already on the first item, but they have not on the second, and that's why we're really delaying the formal action on either A or B. We could take A tonight and take B later, but it's a single project, so we'd like to put it all together.
Gerald, you had a question about the maps, and that will come with the full petition from the property owners, so that item is forthcoming. It's also been included at the Planning Commission level in the case of the first item.
Okay, that was my request to Zach earlier, that when things like this come to us, they ought to come with a map. It shows us what the property is that we're talking about.
Yeah, and that, I agree with you 100%, and that has to occur at the public hearing, so we should have pulled the public hearing material over. The other thing is, we want to be able to show this parcel because it's going to have current City of Rhinelander land attached to annexed land, so the ultimate project is going to be a hybrid to some sense, but it'll all be Rhinelander land when we're done.
Well, I just want to say I have no objection to either of these annexations. I'd just like it to be a little clearer on the second one as to what we're talking about.
Understood. The other thing I would like to say to the council, just simply because we're talking about annexation, is this is probably one of those things that we should be looking at, is cleaning up that whole west of Highway 17. There's several little islands floating around out there. And the town of Pelican will work with them, but we should really get all that cleaned up as we move forward.
That being the case, could you explain the two different kinds of annexation that happen?
Well, there's 3 different kinds. but
Okay,
I'll
sorry,
explain 2
my
of them.
bad.
You have what they call annexation by petition, where the property owner petitions, or the property owners, if it's more than one, they petition to be annexed in. The next kind of annexation is where the city would go and say, we want to annex you. And then we'd follow a procedure where we can annex them. The third kind of, which is really here, is judicial annexation, and that's predicated upon certain situations existing either at the state or local level that require annexation to provide necessary services that can't otherwise be provided, and a court can order land to be annexed.
Thank you. That being the case, you have the option of taking A and moving it in, or waiting for A and B to be moved in together.
I
Gerald?
say wait.
You say wait. Okay. In that case, we will wait on A and B. Discuss.
Excuse me, and I think anybody that can attend the Plan Commission meeting where we talk about these parcels, that's probably a great idea.
Pete, go ahead. I'll have you stand up. Yep. Turn on the mic. Explain who you are.
Hi, I'm Pete Tendrell with Coldwell Banker, representing A, and A has absolutely nothing to do with B. We are ready for A, and we need to move A forward very quickly because we've got plans for a project there. And so, and A is in the town of Pine Lake, not Pelican. And so these two annexations have nothing to do with each other at all. And that's why we went ahead with the planning committee first to get that, and then come to you for the first meeting. So we would request it not being held up, that we can move forward.
And let me just say, on behalf of the city, we recognize that, and we've already talked that if you can get all the building permits you want, because all the pieces are in there. But if the council wants to vote on A tonight, they can. But we already knew that we're not going to delay your project.
Okay. I just want to make that note.
No.
I'd like them to be voted on separately, but that's just my request.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Gerald?
Is there any reason not to vote on them separately?
No, we had the public hearing and it went
Yeah.
through. It went through the planning commission, the A. So.
Okay, I'll move the approval of resolution 2022-6, annexation of PL 641 from Pine Lake Township.
Okay, just clarification on the motion. It's not a resolution, it's an ordinance.
Oh, it said resolution.
It does.
It's got to be an ordinance. That's why I wanted to
Okay.
clarify that.
Yeah.
Please change that word.
Yes.
Mikulowski, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
And I
Ayes
hate to
have
do
it.
this to you again, Mayor, but we have to have a roll call vote because we have to be able to establish 2/3 on an annexation.
Thank you once again for the parliamentarian to my left. Roll call.
Ryan Rossing, David Holt,
Aye.
Andrew Larson,
Aye.
Thomas Kelly,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel, Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
The ayes have it, and the motion carries. And Part B, we will take up at our next, it won't even be our next meeting, it'll be after that, because Planning Commission's at the beginning of the month, so it'll be past that. All right, next, discuss the responsible party for PFAS sampling plan.
Yeah, it's been some time since we've done an update for the council on this topic, so I thought we'd be timely, especially because the airport, the county, and the city have been working collectively on a voluntary sampling program at the DNR's request. To back up a bit, AECOM was hired by the airport on behalf of the responsible party team, and they've been executing on a work plan. Effectively tomorrow, we're going to be kicking off a sampling effort where the city sent letters to 30 some property owners that have private wells. We expect that tomorrow we'll sample at least 11 of those properties that have voluntarily responded favorably to the testing proposal or option available to them. There's no cost to them. Additionally, the city did receive a number of folks that did not consent to testing, and we're going to be following up with those that are on the testing list tomorrow with another invitation to participate. So that's that effort, and so far it's going well. The parties are working well together, and it'll be nice to have that first round of testing to understand if there's any public health implications, concerns to the property owners there that are drinking private well water.
Any questions? All right. This, the PFAS sampling plan that they brought up is basically for the drinking water, potable water on the properties around it. Discuss and approve the University of Wisconsin Lysimer Soils Project at the airport. And Dr. Tingham's also on there for conversation, but we'll let Zach start out.
Yeah, we received this research opportunity through Dr. Tingham's work with a graduate student that he has on his group, and so this is a continuation of the research efforts, academia opportunities with the PFAS issues at the airport. And we presented this to the responsible party team. We did not get consent to do any testing within the fence, so Dr. Tingham has gone back and considered alternatives to that, and we're waiting consent from the county if they would provide the ability for researchers to go on and to do a very low impact, low invasive type of sampling effort to test the soils there. And I'll have Dr. Tingham talk more about that, but there's no cost to the city for this effort. In fact, there's been very little effort required of the city in this effort.
Dr. Tingham?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity. As Zach indicated, I have and my colleagues have funding from the National Science Foundation and the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation that had funded our efforts this past year, and we've gone up to the fence at the airport. However, to complete our scope of work that we proposed to the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation and to work on the science within our project with the National Science Foundation, it is critical that we get some shallow surface samples adjacent to the runways or close to as possible that will complete the sampling that we need to do our columns that we're doing at the university, where we're investigating how PFAS flows through the sandy, unsaturated zones. As Zach indicated, though, various alternatives have been proposed to the responsible parties, but we have yet to gain access to where those lysimeter sampling locations would be most beneficial. As alternatives, proposed a couple spots immediately outside the fence line or immediately to the west of the runway across the road. And I'd gladly take questions. We provided a detailed scope of work, what equipment we would use, what exactly we would be doing. And apologies, I'm just getting all kinds of calls here. And equipment, sampling techniques, and exactly the science of what we've been doing. So I leave it to the city council, Zach and the mayor and legal counsel to advise on the next steps on how our research can go forward and be most beneficial to everyone involved, including the science for not only the city of Rhinelander, but for cities across the country.
So this topic's on hand because the question's been posed to us quite often from the responsible parties. Is this the mayor that wants this done, or is this the city that wants it done, as far as that goes? And we've discussed this in the past as far as the combination of the two. The most advantageous, obviously, presented by Dr. Tingham, is to be right next to the runway where they believe that the deposits of the PFAS were, to be able to study that as it goes through. That being the case, we've been told no, that the FFAA would take a long time to approve it. It might be obtrusive to where the lines are in the ground and utilities, that they wouldn't know, where those would be. Been given a fair amount of obstacles with that. That being the case, we're bringing it to you to at least okay as a city that we have the most advantageous place to do this study possible if the FAA does allow it there, if not on our property right outside the fence or whatever the case might be, so that we can still move forward with this important research. So that's what's before you. Gerald.
I move that the city approve the University of Wisconsin Lysimeter Soils project for the airport as described in the handout.
Michalowski, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Gerald.
So this is to enable them to keep on trying to do it in the most useful way.
Zach, answer that first.
Yeah, most useful and most effective for the purposes of the research is my understanding.
Tom?
I guess I'm just really confused at why, I mean, you explained it, why they're saying no, not to, next to the runway, but honestly, it's confusing to me that they would just throw all these obstacles in the way without even addressing it. Like they would, you know.
I won't go as far as to say they throw obstacles in the way. The obstacles are there whether they throw them that way or not. But yeah.
But to just say, you know, FAA will take too long. It's like, okay, so start the process now then. That's where I'm getting really confused as to why. And people are getting sick from PFAS. People are dying, and to just abruptly say no, that's really disturbing to me.
Anybody else? We have a motion and a second to go forward with testing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Discuss and approve the bipartisan infrastructure bill scope for application. This is Zach.
Yeah, I'll start off with some really good news, and I shared it over the weekend with the council that over the course of 2021, we were working with Senator Baldwin's office on an inclusion in the congressionally directed spending proposals, which are essentially earmarks, where we had applied for $1.6 million to assist with safeguarding water supply from PFAS prevalence. And so we were successful in that inclusion by the Appropriations Committee. Last week, the House and the Senate voted on the bipartisan infrastructure bill financing, and fortunately, Rhinelander's request was supported, and so we're now working with federal agencies to talk about how we tap those dollars and what planning efforts and expectations come as a result of those funds. We know that using federal dollars does come with some lofty expectations at times, but certainly worth the effort when you can avoid having to pay $1.6 million of any local utility ratepayers where their rates might otherwise be affected quite dramatically as a result. So we're working with them on that. That's the first item to share. And then the other ones have been following the Wisconsin Department of Transportation's receipt of federal funds. The next 5 years, the city will be eligible for significant increases in road and other bridge aid. And the first round of deadlines is April 1st. And so we've talked about a potential scope to include some of the other projects we've got on our 5-year capital plan. And Mark can talk more about that if there's questions of him. But we plan to share those applications with the council at the next meeting. We just wanted to advise of you that this item, an extra work effort, is before us and looks very positive because, again, we've got enough road and bridge infrastructure needs out there that any additional help will be certainly appreciated. So that's just an update for all of you. One of the bigger projects that we're exploring is Spring Lake Road and Coolidge. I know Ryan's not there tonight, but that's a project that's been talked about that doesn't have a funding source, but that could be a later year application to address that corridor with largely federally funded support. So 80% or more could be funded through the federal infrastructure dollars that'll be available to us for the next 5 years.
That in your packet's a pretty good explanation of how that works. Any questions? Gerald?
I just wondered how much of a crunch there's going to be to try to get all this done, like some of it by April 1st, and I assume other deadlines along the way are our contract engineers going to be able to handle that?
Mark.
Well, we've had that discussion with them, and certainly they've got other municipalities under contract. We'll get to another item in the next item as it relates to internal capacity. I would say our internal capacity, especially if we're looking at a 5-year horizon, not only for the planning, the design, but also the construction oversight, the project closeout. So, we're going to need additional capacity, especially if it's on the utility side and is not so much budgetary sensitive when it comes down to shared revenue limits or shared revenue revenues, but also on the levy limits. So I think we're going to need some additional hands on deck. But I know Mark, I see him at the podium there, but I think he's been responsive in terms of what their capacity is to let this.
As far as the application process for the first solicitation in April, it's not a full-scale application process. It's a couple pages in that application. It's a pretty easy process, and there's going to be no issue in getting that in by that date, Gerald.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Discuss and approve the amendments to the city's organizational chart.
Rachel may want to come to the podium for this one too, but this is the current state of the city's organizational chart. The first notable inclusion is the assistant chief in the fire department, as was directed of myself and city staff to work together on creating that job description, identifying funding sources, and then ultimately sourcing and placement. So that's the first item for notation. The other one is the modernization of the use of the word secretary from various support staff. We now call them administrative assistants. That's the way they're called in our wage and compensation system as well, so we want to be consistent with that. The other addition in there is on the lead roles within the water utility and otherwise, is some consideration for the lead, but also a potential temporary relief supervisor role as people as the foremen get support, but don't necessarily have that person as a true assistant or deputy, or if the group size doesn't necessarily warrant the creation of a lead role, there still would be some intermittent or less than routine supervisory obligations on a single person, most likely. So that's the other addition in there. And then finally, we've had some discussion at the last meeting about the status of the city engineer and recruitment challenges associated with that. We continue to get feedback that partially could be compensation. I think the other consideration, again, is competition and skill set and workforce challenges and shortages faced almost universally. So one of the considerations, or the ideas that we had kicked around, at least as an administrative team, is the potential titling of a public works superintendent / assistant city administrator. And again, the dollars and cents on this really remains unchanged, and that the funding sources being both a blend of city general fund expenditures, but also the utilities. And the utilities don't have the restrictions, as we just talked, as much as certainly our general fund budgetary constraints on an annual basis. So we haven't put together a full job description, but it would be a revision of both public works activities, utility oversight and management, planning, design, all those efforts that come associated with much of the construction and project oversight as the city presses forward. So that's one of the concepts. The other alternative would be to put it simply as a public works director role. Likely would be compensated a little bit less than if they were assisting the city administrator in more of an advisory or support capacity when it comes to public works activities. So there's some options here. I guess we wanted to put it on the table for discussion and get some feedback. And I'd ask Steve, the mayor, or Rachel to chime in with any items that I may have overlooked or missed.
Steve's quiet.
I'd like to, if I could add to that. So I've also gone in and added a level to create levels 1 and 2 for the utility maintenance worker in the water utility department and for the street maintenance workers in the street department. The effort behind that is all for me to get the job descriptions in line with what those employees are currently doing and look at alignment for those folks in those positions. And then as well, made an update to the wastewater treatment plant utility department for compliance specialist to get that individual in line. I believe Zach covered everything else.
Yeah, and I would just add to that too. It gives us, based upon employee feedback, it gives us an opportunity to create some career progression opportunities like we did with the administrative assistants. We have 1, 2, and 3 levels. So as people progress, let's talk about, longevity being, from a compensation standpoint, this would also give people the opportunity as they gain skills, tenure, and experience, that they would have a path forward and a progression that would align with their production and support of their roles.
A couple of things I'd like to add is addressing when we hear our employees talk and then responding to it. One of the ways that can happen is obviously with job descriptions. So they fit that job description if somebody's doing exceptionally more, like in the wastewater plant with compliance. And that was an issue that was brought to us by Jim back at that work session or whatever. And it's being addressed in this position, hopefully to satisfaction for everybody, yet at the same time understanding our budgetary constraints. Explain a little bit more about what the discussion went into for the public works superintendent / assistant administrator, because the other portion that we really looked at too was the possibility of succession planning and how we move through any of that in order so that there's not the gaps always when something happens. The unexpected retirements or anything else, when those gaps happen, how in the world do we get through them rather than throwing out something? We try to be creative with our engineers so we can talk about projects, and if there's a deadline by April and you're like, okay, how are we going to get this done? Would there have been projects in the hamper had we had one on staff? What does that look like? If that doesn't happen because you can't recruit one, what is the next hole we can plug and try to fix that way? But Zach or Steve, if you want to add to what were the thoughts going into that?
Yeah, for example, in the streets department last week, I shared that the streets foreman had retired, and this, it's both support upstream and downstream. That if our team members are constantly having to fill in for succession planning, or in a format of succession planning, it creates additional pressure and stress on their ability to accomplish their day-to-day operations. And I would say the day-to-day for us is pretty well managed and maintained. It's most of that long view. And I think people ask, well, what are you missing without a public works director or a leader in that role? I'll tell you, on the PFAS issues, that's something that's not going away. And if we've got a horizon with all of these funding opportunities, there's a tremendous amount of extra effort and planning and foresight that needs to be put in order for us to be successful both in achieving the resources and in implementation. We talked about annexation and some of the future service areas that the city will need to meet those utility needs for. So there's no shortage of kind of planning, coordination, and then ultimately implementation of public works, parks, utilities, all of that. So in order for those plans to be successful, implementation will need to go well. But it's also supporting the day-to-day needs of the foreman. If there's a leadership gap or a separation or a resignation, those types of things, we've got some space, hopefully, or some additional hands to cover those needs.
Tom?
I think everything on here looks really good. Where are we as far as the job description for the assistant fire chief?
Good question. First meeting was had 2 weeks ago, as you know. I was a part of the opening section of that. Chief handed out here what he proposed to the administrative team, or the team that was asked to be at that thing. Feedback on this is as far as I know, has not been had yet to go back as far as that goes. I know there were questions asked, but that's at least what I know. Zach, anything?
Yeah, we continue to review the job description. So the chief had shared one. I also located the most recent one that we had utilized when Tom Wadick was in the role. There's also at least one other draft that had been prepared over some period of time. So we're in the process of reconciling those job descriptions right now. That's one level of effort. The second level of effort is financing. So we continue to talk about how both the needs of the department are supported, but also how are we going to finance the position. If our budgetary revenues are capped or if we're maxed on that, we've got to find additional or alternative revenue sources. So in short, we're certainly looking at the ambulance enterprise fund or special revenue fund to support that, but that's only one of the funding sources without having to carve out or cut into the existing department's operating budget. Overtime is also something that we've talked about with the schedule of the person. So I think it's going to come from a blend of sources, but we haven't reached the financing for what is expected to be about $120,000 budgetary impact. And then if they have a take-home vehicle, that's probably additional $30,000 to the budget. So again, those are the background details that we're working through. And Rachel may have some additional points, but that's from my view where things stand and where the work lies ahead.
Is there no funding opportunities available right now?
No ongoing. I mean, we can use one-time dollars, but once the calendar year is over, those dollars have expired or run out, then we have to find a sustainable funding source that we can count on an annual basis.
All right.
Carrie.
So in looking at this, the police and fire departments are under the administrator, but was brought to my attention that those are really supposed to be under the mayor. Can you?
They were previously under the mayor, but even when they were under the mayor, they're still functioning under the administrator.
But what was brought to me is that there's a state statute regarding that, and that it's in the fire commission manual.
There's no state statute that says the mayor's in charge. I don't know what someone brought to you.
Okay, I'm questioning it. That's why I'm bringing it up, because
I mean, I can certainly put, for the council, if you request, I could put a statutory brief together that would show you the parameters. There's tremendous misunderstanding of the role of the Police and Fire Commission, especially a Police and Fire Commission that does not have supplementary powers like ours.
Okay.
I mean, it's important to recognize that mayors also have powers under certain statutes that they really don't necessarily have, because that's only if you elect those powers for that position. Some cities don't even have mayors.
Right.
They just have city managers.
I just want to make sure that everything's legit before we actually vote on it.
If you'd like to make a motion, I would even appreciate this, to make a motion for a legal briefing on what statutes are out there to govern.
Yeah.
I'll do that. You don't have to make a motion.
Okay.
I'll
No,
just do it.
yeah.
Thank you.
But I would like to make a motion to table this org chart until we get an answer as to how that comes out. So we have a more knowledgeable information before we approve this org chart.
Barnett, second.
We have a motion and a second. Tom?
All I really want to stress, I agree we need an assistant fire chief, and we have to, in my mind, we have to fill that position sooner than later.
Okay. Motion to table with a second by Barnett. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Discuss and approve the Pelham Street Lift Station engineering scope and services not to exceed $23,500, page 34 in your packet.
Barnett, I make a motion to approve Pelham Street Lift Station engineering scope of services not to exceed $23,500.
Edison, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call roll.
Andrew Larson,
Aye.
Ryan Rossing, Eileen Daniel, Thomas Kelly,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. Monthly reports from departments.
Barnett, I make a motion to accept the reports.
Holt, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'd like to thank our department heads again for a complete report that was pretty informative at this point. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. If necessary to convene into closed session per...
Chris,
Whoa.
we gonna pay the bills?
Oh, we're not paying any bills. Where are they on there?
They're not on the agenda, but we've got.
Yeah.
From last time, all right.
They're just looking to get some signatures. All right. If necessary to convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute Section 19.851C and G, consider employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility in deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other specific public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. A, discuss the contract negotiations with Rhinelander Professional Police Association Local 38. Discuss litigation in which it is or likely to become involved.
Holt, I'll make motion to go into closed session for the above stated purpose.
Barnett, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, please call roll.
David Holt,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Ryan Rossing, Carrie Mikulowski,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel, Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Andrew Larson,
I will abstain.
Thomas Kelly.
Aye.
We will go into closed session. An open session. Where's the lawyer? That must be police. either that or somebody stole one of your rigs. Somebody stole one of your rigs. Hey. Yeah. From closed session, we have explanation of a claim against the city.
Yeah, if everybody understands the world of claims, people make claims against the city, and when the city gets a claim, the city really has the ability to act on the claim or to ignore the claim. If you ignore the claim for more than 60 days after it's been filed, it's denied. I mean, that's just what the statute says. But in this case, I thought it prudent that the city discuss, and again, it's a claim against the city and could result in a lawsuit, so it's appropriate to have it be closed session just to explain what it's about. But I'll now let everyone know that a claim's been filed by, well, we know them as Green Golf Partners. They are now owned by Troon. I think it's Troon Golf Services, Inc. And they made a claim based on the fact that the city has gone ahead and signed a contract with Oliphant, which is a new company, to manage the golf course based upon the agreement that we had with Green Golf Partners that we would give them 1 year to see if they could meet our expectations. They didn't meet our expectations. We terminated their contract, and we hired Oliphant to take over for the year 2022 through 24. And I think everyone would know that because that was part of the council meetings. It was an open session. Everybody could see that. Well, suddenly Green Golf Partners is suggesting that because they had not gotten the proper piece of paper that said the 3-year contract, which is an automatically renewable contract, had not automatically renewed. And this occurred during the Daniel Guild period of unrest in the city, shall we say. We all were under the impression that they were fully well aware of the fact that the contract had been terminated because they sat through council meetings where they made presentations and we told them, you know, that we didn't like what they were doing. We actually voted, and there is a resolution that said, okay, we'll extend for 1 year, but that's it. You've got to do this in 1 year, and if you don't do this in 1 year, they agreed to that. They did. They performed for the 1 year. Now they're suggesting there's 2 years left on the contract. And we're suggesting, come on, that's not true. You know that's not true. And they said, well, we think it is. And so they basically filed a claim for $106,056 and what did I say, 58 cents. I can look up the exact, but I don't think that's important right now. But the bottom line is they filed a claim. And I've asked the council, or I'm asking the council now, if they want to take any action or they simply don't want to go forward.
I'll accept a motion.
Michalowski, I will make a motion to deny the claim from Green Golf Partners / Troon.
Barnett, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries.
Okay, so what I'll be doing from this point based upon that is I will present a formal letter of denial to the attorneys that are representing Green Golf Partners, and we'll keep you posted on what, if anything, occurs after we formally deny. Yeah, okay, I guess that's it.
Future agenda items, anything to add? Tom?
I would like to make a request that we add a work session to discuss the snow removal policies. I would love to be able to have the city street employees come in and discuss what was good, what was bad, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that needs to go on the future agenda or for approval, basically.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned.